Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I never thought a simple text could feel like the end of the world. 2 words. Barely more than a breath. I need time. That was from Clara. Clara, my best friend since college, my confidant, my partner in everything from terrible movie nights to late-night pizza runs. And now those words sat on my phone, mocking me. I stared at my screen for what felt like hours, trying to convince myself she just needed space, that it wasn't really over. But deep down, I knew. I knew that the Clara I loved, the one who laughed at my dumb jokes, who insisted on leaving me little notes in my lunchbox, who held my hand when I couldn't sleep, was slipping away. I remember the night before she sent that text. We had dinner at our favorite little Italian place, the one with the red and white checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic that clung to your clothes. She was quiet, more quiet than usual, but I told myself it was nothing. She sipped her wine and smiled at me once, and that one smile fooled me into thinking everything was fine. I should have known better. The day she texted, I tried to act normal, at least on the outside. I went to work, typed emails, sat in meetings, but my mind kept wandering to her. I imagined her in our apartment, probably pacing or staring out the window, thinking about what she had just done. I wanted to call, but I couldn't. There was a strange mix of fear and respect, a part of me that whispered, give her space. 2 days later, I couldn't resist anymore. I needed to see her. Not to beg, not to fight, just to understand. I drove to her apartment with my heart in my throat, half expecting to find her there, quietly waiting for me, apologetic, maybe even laughing at the absurdity of the situation. But when I walked up the hallway, I froze. Through the frosted glass of her door, I could see her, and she wasn't alone. I pressed my forehead against the cool metal of the door handle, trying to make sense of the shapes inside. Clara was laughing, a kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months, and next to her was someone I didn't know. Tall, confident, the kind of person who seemed like he belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. My stomach twisted. My chest felt tight. I wanted to turn around and leave, to pretend I had never seen anything, but I couldn't. I knocked, softly at first, hoping somehow that my presence would make sense, that she would welcome me back into the warmth we once shared. The laughter stopped, and for a moment, silence. Then the door opened, and she looked at me. Clara, with those big green eyes wide and startled. Eli? She whispered, her voice a mixture of surprise and guilt. I tried to read her expression, to find any trace of the woman I knew, the woman who had always been honest with me, the woman who had held me when the world felt heavy. But the guilt in her eyes didn't belong to someone breaking up with me. It belonged to someone caught. Caught between the past and the present, caught between me and him. His name, I learned later, was Finn. Finn, with a smile that made you forget to breathe, a voice that could fill a room, and a confidence that made him seem untouchable. And there he was, standing in my living room, or rather what used to feel like my living room, with her hand on his arm. For a moment I couldn't speak. My throat felt like sandpaper. My mind scrambled for words that wouldn't come. She tried, Eli, it's not what it looks like. But the words sounded hollow, even to her. And I realized then, in that split second of clarity, that it wasn't about what it looked like. It was about what it meant. It meant that the Clara I had loved, the one who promised me forever in 1,000 little ways, was already somewhere else, in heart and mind, if not in body. And I had been blind, caught up in my own hope, telling myself that love was enough, that we were enough. But hope, I learned, was fragile, and sometimes fragile things break quietly, without warning, without ceremony. I stepped back, my hands shaking, and said the only thing that felt true, I'll leave you two alone. I turned around, my shoes scraping against the wooden floor, each step heavier than the last. And as I walked away, I felt a strange kind of emptiness, a hollow space where her laughter used to live, and a sharp, bitter clarity. I had loved her fully, and yet, it wasn't enough. I wandered through the quiet streets, the city around me buzzing with life that suddenly felt foreign. Couples laughed, friends chatted, strangers held hands, and all I could hear was the echo of Clara's laugh mixed with Finn's deep, confident tone. Each step I took reminded me of everything I had lost. Not just her, but the version of us that existed before words like time and alone crept in. By the time I reached my apartment, I felt drained, as though the weight of 2 days' worth of hope and fear had settled onto my shoulders. I sat down on the edge of my bed, staring at the floorboards, trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed. Clara had always been my world, and now, suddenly, that world had shifted in a way I hadn't imagined possible. I thought about the little things, the moments that had once made us inseparable. Our morning coffee rituals, her habit of leaving sticky notes with little doodles on the fridge, our long drives to nowhere in particular. And now, those moments were just memories, warm, comforting, but irretrievably gone. I realized that love isn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes, it's about consistency, presence, the small things that show someone they're seen and valued. And I had given all that, yet it hadn't been enough to keep her. The next morning, I tried to carry on as if nothing had changed, but everything had. Every notification on my phone made my heart leap with false hope, only to sink when it wasn't her. At work, I couldn't concentrate. Spreadsheets blurred together, emails became meaningless, and I found myself staring out of the window more than I stared at my tasks. It wasn't anger that consumed me. It was a quiet, persistent ache. 2 days later, I saw them again. Not intentionally. Life has a way of throwing these moments at you when you least expect them. I was grabbing coffee at the corner shop we used to visit together, hoping for a small reprieve from the storm inside me, when I walked past a familiar pair of legs, Clara's. And there he was again, Finn, holding her hand, smiling that same unshakable smile. I stopped dead in my tracks, pretending to scroll through my phone, but my heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. I realized then that there was no confrontation needed, no dramatic moment where I'd reclaim her attention. The truth was already clear. She had made her choice, and for the first time, I let myself feel something I hadn't allowed in days: relief. Not relief for losing her, but relief that the weight of uncertainty was lifted. I didn't have to guess anymore. I didn't have to hope or wait. The path ahead, while painful, was mine to walk alone. That evening, I called my best friend, Harper. Harper has been my anchor through everything. Heartbreak, career struggles, late-night rants, and moments of sheer joy. "You okay?" she asked, her voice calm but steady, as if she already knew the answer. I paused, listening to her patience, and finally whispered, "I think so. I saw her. With him." There was silence on the other end, and then Harper said, "Eli, you loved her fully. You gave everything you could. If she can't see that, it's not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of her choices. You don't need to chase someone who's already left." Her words hit me like a thunderclap, sharp and undeniable. It was time to stop pretending that love alone could hold someone in place. Real love, I realized, sometimes means letting go, even when your heart wants to cling. And that night I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't make a scene. I simply closed my eyes, breathed in, and let the quiet settle around me. A strange mixture of sorrow and newfound freedom. The days that followed were surreal. I kept myself busy, not to distract, but to rebuild the parts of me that had slowly faded in the shadow of our relationship. I ran, I read, I laughed again with friends, and for the first time in weeks, I felt light. And somewhere deep down, I knew that the part of me that loved Clara would always exist, but it no longer controlled me. A few weeks later, I saw Finn and Clara again, this time at the park, walking their dog. They waved, friendly and casual, and I returned the gesture with a small, honest smile. It was strange, this feeling of peace, knowing that life had moved forward without me needing to drag anyone along. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again. Love, I realized, isn't always about possession. It's about presence when it matters, and when it doesn't, it's about courage, the courage to let someone go, to step into the unknown, and to trust that the world has more in store. And as I watched Clara and Finn disappear down the path, hand in hand, I didn't feel bitterness. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. Clara needed to find herself, and in doing so, she found him. And I found myself.